Calm Down with Erin and Charissa is a production of iHeartRadio.
5, 4, 3, 2.
You're not saying the one.
I am not doing it. I guess you're supposed to not say the one? I don't know. Do you ever know when we start an interview and they do that clap thing? I still have no idea why they do it.
I don't either. Joel Santos, this one's for you. He always does it, and I either try to put my tongue right through it, and I also think it's like the gator chomp. This is
hi,
before,
everyone.
Yeah, hi. Welcome to our tangents. This is usually when we sit down with Dak Prescott, Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers, do we have a ton of questions for you? Come right over.
Aloha and mahalo.
Mecca, Hakuna Matata. Whatever.
Melikaliki Maka is the thing
That's what I
to
was
say
looking for.
on a bright Hawaiian. I know, I got you. I know what's happening. My love of life, it is, we always tape our podcasts on Mondays, so this will air later on in the week, but it was Memorial Day weekend. Did we have a good time? What's going on over there?
We had a good time here. We let off some steam. Can we talk about some news and notes before we get to the highs and the lows?
Of course.
How about the news? And I think I tipped you off of this earlier, of the match with Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers.
Oh, hell yeah.
The
I know.
golf
I need an invite
tourney.
to Montana for this.
Well, you're always welcome. This is what I
Sexy.
want. I mean, we can't work the event, obviously, because it's on Turner Sports, which I'm jealous. Fox, why didn't we get this? Can Charles Barkley please just be out there and be the roaming, I guess, reporter on the golf course? You can't call it a sideline reporter. What do they call those reporters out there?
I don't know, but put him anywhere, in the bunker, in the trees. I mean, where's Waldo?
Yeah.
Just get him out on the
To the windows, to the walls. I mean, this guy.
Well, all these.
Yep. I'm so excited about
get
it.
it.
I mean, Tom Brady, my husband and
You're
I.
going to be there,
Yeah,
aren't you?
we're going to be there. Very much looking forward to it. We could even do a live podcast during it. Aaron Andrews reporting here from the match in Big Sky, Montana. But Tom,
That's what I'm
Jarrett, and
talking
I
about.
were saying, this freaking guy, he didn't stop. He was just putting the zingers out there on social media. Like, it was amazing.
Who runs that?
What's that?
I was going to say, his social media is next level. Like, the second he left New England, that shit just like ramped right up. There was the cartoons that came out, all that stuff. Well, according to the media, I'm in love with Tom Brady, which
Way to go.
have always been in. Well, I mean, fine. Kyle's like, so I didn't know you were that into Brady, huh? I'm like, I am now. I mean, I'm so turned on by winners. And like when he went, look, I always loved him in New England, fine, class act, the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
But when he went to Tampa and it was like, watch me work. It was so hot to me because I just love somebody that, I refer to this statement a lot, but Ray Lewis said the difference between great and greatness is an individual is great and greatness is making everyone else around you better. And like, that's what I saw. And granted, of course, the defense was phenomenal and all the other parts, but that, Brady factor. So I'm jealous that you're going to be there for it. When is it again?
July 6th. Jarrett Stoll. I mean, it's etched into the wall. That's the funny part. Yes, the clickbait. The newspapers had fun with you throwing game at Tom Brady. That's not what you were doing. Read the article. That's not what you were doing.
Hot.
My favorite is when people come after me and they're like, "Oh, you're always commenting on Tom's IG. Aaron's just trying to shoot her shot." No, that's not me. Have you met my husband? He wears the cologne. He wears his outfit. Like, our household is obsessed. We love it. First of all, he's a friend.
Yeah, but you guys are also friends with him.
But he's just the freaking man. I mean, exactly what you said. Like, we obviously loved him when we met him and he's in New England. But exactly how he came and just laid it down and slayed in Tampa was like, okay, I'm on board. Yeah,
okay.
You do you. So highs and lows of your week. How, like, you look like you had a time at the lake. You also
I look like I have a lot of foundation on is what I look like when I'm in this reverse. I don't even. It's this new
orange.
It's this new like sun glow. I know, but you have like a glow happening. For you listeners, this is very boring, but it looks like I just went to the MAC counter and tried on all their products. I did. I had a little gals weekend up at the lake. Of course, you're always invited, but you have a lot of other friends, which I don't know if I'm into you having other friends. Whenever I hear you say like, oh, I was with my girlfriends, I'm like, I don't like you having any other friends other than me. That said, fun time at the week, at the lake. And then I came back and house and home. I converted my garage into an office. So that's finished.
Can't wait to see it.
The only low is, I think that I'm not being a very good wife, and I need to work on this because I'm getting, now that COVID's over and we're back into our independent lifestyles, like I'm getting back into that. I need to make a concerted effort to spend more time with my husband since we're bi-coastal.
Right.
So I'm going to work on that. And I'm going to, as my therapist said, I need to throw on a dress every now and then and be the lady in the relationship.
Okay.
And so I'm going to work on that. That's my low, because I was just being irritable for no reason, and I shouldn't do that.
But
so
is this more of like throw on
that.
a dress and make some dinner, which by the way sounds so incredibly sexist, or like what is it? What's your first
Softer.
step? Okay.
Yeah, and my therapist is great. The reason, and it's not like sexist or anything, that it's just more of like be soft, the softer side of Sears. Remember that campaign?
Yeah.
Anyone that's like under the age of 40 doesn't. I think I just sometimes I'm going back into and you can understand this, like our independent ways where I'm like, I don't need anyone. And I'm like, okay, so I'm going to work on that. But that's my side tangent. So that was my low, to just be more cognizant that I guess when you get married, there's another person in the relationship.
I know.
Got it. So that's what I'm doing. What about you, babe?
Was SPF not available at the lake this weekend? I mean, I saw some pictures.
No, it wasn't. Look at red rope. I'm going to have to go and get a lot of lasering. Look at this.
Yeah, you can't be doing that in your 40s, I know better. By the way. Stop it.
I know better. I just hit the table and Daisy got up. It's okay. The dog. My dog. Yeah, it's a little red. Don't you hate it when you ever get like burnt and someone's like, oh, you're looking a little red? I'm like, it'll be a tan. Don't worry about it. But this is also a lot of laser treatments.
That's also, by the way, what I used to do on the daily growing up in Florida. And now I'm paying for it now with just this skin and all the laser treatments. Tough week in the Andrew Stoll household. I feel like throughout my life, well, not my life, but over the last few years, have not been shy with my battle with cervical cancer and so forth. And there's a lot of things you deal with after you have it. And infertility is one of them. And it was a devastating week, to say the least, in our house. And, it's interesting because I think I shared with you last month that a couple of videos, right, on Instagram as my voice quivers. So cute. And people are very embarrassed to talk about this stuff. And I was joking with you this week as we were kind of going through all my crap. And I was like, you want me to be another spokesperson? I'll be another spokesperson. What? It's like, what movie or what show is that from? What do you want from me? But yeah, it's like, looked at my husband this week and it's like, shit, here we go. I'm another freaking person of something. But I think what makes me so mad and pissed off about this whole situation is that people are so embarrassed to talk about this, and they shouldn't be. And, I'm excited today for our guest coming up because it's about stress and anxiety, and the stress and anxiety and disappointment and grief in our house has never been bigger. And that's my low. My high was my group of just people, and this is my husband included, that we were able to talk to about this. And again, what's so crazy about this whole journey for us is that we learned so many people deal with this, and we learned that they are afraid to say something. And we are so lucky to have the core group of people that we do, you included. I walked my dog the other day and called you and bawled my brains out. And you listened, but then you gave me a stern talking to, and I appreciated it. But also like the men that have reached out, and that's very much to do with my husband's circle, and just getting texts from them and their heartbreak for us was huge. But I will tell you this, when there's another high after this, if you are dealing with this out there, and men included, talk to your people. I mean, we're talking so much about mental health today. You cannot keep this in. You have to talk and lean on your people. And even though it's like a really sensitive, horrible subject, like your friends, they will understand. And two girlfriends in my life, Charissa Thompson and my other girlfriend, Megan Mitchell, I just bitched to you the other day and bawled to you. And then I texted Megan and I bitched to her about something. And you both said the same thing to me. Okay, you know what? You do have it in you to continue. Let's pretend you're TB12 and this is your freaking Super Bowl, and let's fucking go. And I said to both of you, my God, you both know me so well, to bring it back to Tom Brady. So there I am shooting my shot again. I will also tell you another high was, as shitty as we felt in this house this week, we turned on the Friends reunion and it was so good. And we both said, thank God we watched it. Did you watch it?
I did. And first of all, I want to commend you and now I'm going to cry because I just love you so much. And good friends are like extensions of. I remember when you and I got in a fight and I started crying when we got in a fight and you're like, why are you crying? I'm like, because that's like how I like convey like how I care about people. But I'm just proud of you to go through everything that you're going through. And I'm always here for you. And, like anyone listening to this podcast, hopefully you have those people in your life because it's not when things are good. It's when things go bad, you find out who's there, and I'll always be there for you. And very similar to, what you said, I'm going to be there to give you a big hug, but then I'm also going to pick you up off the floor. And sometimes that's a little tough love. That's even one of my marriage. But it is that thing that, I just love you and I only want, the best for you, but you have a tremendous amount of support and you are running a race, but that race ain't over like I told you. So maybe we're on mile 24 and we're not at the pace that you want, but there's a couple more miles left here and I'll be there to carry you over the finish line if you need to.
Love
so
you.
Just know that you being open about it's easy to stand there, and work the NFC championship game and your life looks perfect and your husband and you've got this perfect family
fake
and
hair
all this
blowing
stuff,
in the wind at Lambeau.
Fake hair, yeah, right. Dun, dun, dun. Yeah. But your ability to be honest about what it is that you're going through on every level, Erin. I mean, from what has happened to you. And anyways, I just really want you to know that your openness helps way more people than you realize, even me. I've now looked at my situation and been like, okay, I need to get going on some things because, so thank you for being vulnerable. And just know that, you've got a tremendous amount of support. And anyone listening that's going, whether it's infertility or any issue that you have going on, and we'll dive into that a little bit more with our guest, Dr. Caroline Leaf, that mental wellness and mental awareness about mental health. And, some of the athletes that we love, right? The Dak Prescotts of the world, who you just can't help but root for, stands up there and says, I'm going through this, or his brother, passing away and the vulnerability on that stage, right? So it doesn't matter if you're the quarterback of the Cowboys or, you in the position that you have. Everyone needs to be open and honest about what they're going through if they can. Some people like the privacy, but I'm just saying that your openness helps more people than you realize. So thank you for that.
Friends reunion.
Friends. That's what it's all about, is your group, right? Your group. And what I realized in watching it last night, and I was a fan of the show. Did you just spit that plastic out?
No,
that was like the Pretty Woman gum thing.
I was fake kissing Howie because apparently.
Oh, that looked like you went like with the gum. Have you ever done that before? Anyways,
all the time.
I digress. The Friends reunion. So I was a fan of the show, but what I didn't realize until last night watching it is that group was going through something that like nobody else knew, right? And so their bond, like even when they said that they did that huddle before every show, I said, you stop it right now. Like that is, it was just, it brought it back to like your circle that you have around you to support you. That's a huddle. The sports, we love a huddle, like bringing the group of people you love together. I just loved everything about it. What was your favorite part?
I was just going to ask you that. My favorite part, I think the thing we're all texting about with each other is, first of all, I liked Lisa Kudrow so much more. Not that I wasn't a fan of her, but she was so lovely in the reunion. And I don't know, I guess, like, I don't know. I just love her so much more now.
She also looks exactly the same.
And I know we're makeup artists, Brett. Good job. What was the other one?
Great.
I mean, I think what everybody's freaking out about was that Ross and Rachel really had a crush on each other. And it's like, so I immediately looked to see if he's married right now. Sorry if you're dating him and, you're a fan of the show. But I was checking out to see if he was married because I was like, there's still a chance. And all the behind the scenes footage of like them cuddling on the couch and then everybody saying, oh, we knew y'all were crushing on each other. Stop it.
Why is this not happening? Move over Harry and Meghan. I mean, this would be like the couple of all couples. And now the Brad thing, I've always wanted the reunion of Jen and Brad when they're at the Golden Globes and that touch and the thing. And I was like, oh my God, maybe there's a chance. Doesn't seem like that's happening. So Ross and Rachel are, I mean, can you even freaking imagine if they got back together in real life?
Yeah, no, it'd be amazing. And the other, Matt LeBlanc was hot back in the day. Like he was freaking hot. Those photos of him.
And I also liked I loved the stories of the auditions.
Yes.
Where it was like, all I could think about is like, wonder if you were someone who like auditioned for those parts. And like Marta Kaufman's like, we couldn't find anyone. I'd be like, wow. Whatever. I mean, imagine being like the person that they called back and it was like between you and Chandler, whatever. And it was like knowing that you were so close. Talk about life changing. Yeah. But now I can't imagine another character because that's just the way it works.
Mike Mulvihill, line one of my favorite guys at Fox. He basically, he deals with all our ratings. He knows how to schedule our games. I'm not doing him justice with his title, but he's my dream. I go to him for demo numbers, ratings numbers. Jarrett and I, after we watched the reunion, we just started looking up the whole thing about their contracts and when they all held out together so they could all be equally paid. They were all paid in this particular article we read, $2 to $3 million to do the reunion show. HBO Max's subscriptions went up 600% when the Friends reunion came out.
Shit.
They're fucking money. They are.
You think? And like, remember when James Corden at the beginning was like reading off all the numbers? He's like, it's been seen in like 100, the show's been watched 100 billion times. And even their faces were like, I need to know what those residual checks look
200 million, no, 20 million a year each.
And
we went to brunch today, and
I'll be there for you
always. And we went to brunch today with our buddy that is a former producer, and he was saying we're talking about how they sat out and they all made $1 million per episode for seasons 9 and 10. And our buddy reminded us, you guys keep in mind that wasn't when it was just 10 episodes a season. They were doing like 22 episodes. So you do the math.
Also, 17 years ago, $1 million is now what? 10 million or whatever it might be. I mean, that's crazy.
Okay, next show, you want to do something, you want to see them do something like this, which is the next worthy show for something like this where you get all the feels.
For a reunion? Yeah. Oh, well, I mean, I think that you would say Seinfeld. Like, isn't that that's more your like...
Seinfeld, or I would want, and I know they're doing a whole like reboot, but I really would love Sex and the City, but you have to have Kim Cattrall there. You need to have all of the parties there that I feel like...
And they need to be honest about the nonsense.
Mary, yes.
Like that's what it's like. If you're gonna do it, then sit down and be. I mean, look at what you're doing even on this podcast. Like I know that when we even talked about doing a podcast a couple of years ago, I was like, do it if you're gonna be you. And remember, even some of our wonderful Russell Wilson said that to you. Erin said that to you. Roger said that to you. He's like, okay, we're gonna do a podcast, but you have to be you.
Right.
And that's how I think about these reunion shows where like even them saying about the Ross and Rachel thing. I
know.
Like, that's all. I love
that. But
are
you kidding me? And I never thought about it, but James Corden was onto something. Are you telling me nobody on that like cast was having sex with each other
together?
Come on. They were all freaking hot. They were all probably partying together. Like, tell me nobody hooked up. No freaking way.
I bet you it was a Chandler Monica situation. I bet you they did.
Matt LeBlanc had to be hooking up with someone. He was hot.
But who?
I don't know.
I also see him being like the like hot. Remember Joey Lawrence? I may have hosted a show with him. Splash. I'm not bragging.
Cute.
These are just facts.
Yeah.
Remember on Blossom how he was like the hot dumb brother? Like Joey was like the hot dumb friend.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Like, are you into that?
I don't know. But one more thing I'll say. Since we've watched the reunion, we've had the Friends repeats on nonstop now. And I'm curious how much those numbers, I love a rating, have increased. It's like when an artist dies and everybody goes and listens to their music and you see the spike in numbers. But yeah, we've had it on all day in the house.
It's a great point because yours truly, who peripherally I liked Friends, if it was on, I'd watch it, but I didn't seek it out. Now I feel excited to go back and watch it, knowing like the behind the scenes and the backstory and the whole thing. Also, how money are those executive producers and the creators and the writers like? Jesus. Oh, I also liked real quickly. I liked when Jennifer Aniston's producer on the show she was working on was like, oh, that show won't make you a star. And then James Corden, he's so good. He's like, oh, we have that producer here tonight. It was so funny. She got like all embarrassed, like she was going to have to confront him.
But mad he was on that show. I thought he did a great job. Like, I don't know what your problem is. But there was like this whole like ordeal where people were like pissed off that James Corden was hosting it. I thought he did a freaking phenomenal job. I loved him.
You know what those people need? They need Dr. Caroline Leaf in their life.
And a calm down
award.
They
need to figure. Well, exactly. We are going to dive into all things mental health and awareness with our next guest. I need it all. You and your vulnerability, which again, I cannot overstate how much I respect you for doing that. We'll figure out why the mind works the way it does. She's coming up next. We have a lot of questions for her. This is the Calm Down podcast, and Ross and Rachel, please get back together. Make us happy.
I'll be there for you.
We shouldn't sing.
I love the one where at the end, like where they showed the reenact. Oh my God, having them do the kiss one when they were script reading it. And then the one where
you know what I didn't need?
What?
Go ahead.
I like the one where it was like, my eyes. And then she was like, you guys were just so excited for you to get in the apartment.
Yeah. Because he didn't want to see Ross and Monica, and then he jumps out. Those table reads were really cute. Well, I know Erin and I are very excited to welcome in our guest, Dr. Caroline Leaf, 38 years and then some of experience in, the well-renowned neuroscientist and best-selling author that you are. That is a title that Erin and I will never have in terms of neuroscientists. We are humbled by your presence, and we can't wait to speak to you about all of the things. For those individuals, Caroline, that don't know your background, would you mind just sort of explaining to our listeners how you got into this incredibly impressive field?
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for having me on your podcast. I always love to share, and I'm always, it's such an important topic to talk about people's minds, because that's what drives us. So basically, I'm as you said, a cognitive neuroscientist and communication pathologist. What I study is psychoneurobiology. So what that means is I look at mind, brain, body. And I started off 38 years ago in an era when a time period in science where they didn't believe the brain could change. And I was being trained to work with people with brain damage. And I just remember my one neuroscience lecturer saying, well, the brain can't change. So therefore, when you work with traumatic brain injured patients, you are going to have to just teach them to compensate. And that just I said, no, I'm sorry, I cannot deal with that. I said, if you think of it as humans, we are always having new experiences. We're learning, we're changing. And that makes logical sense, because in the 80s, they believed that the mind was separate from the brain. So that they got right, but they didn't believe the brain could change. So they just thought, okay, well, it doesn't matter what you do with your mind because the brain's not going to change. So just teach compensations. That's very illogical. So I challenged that, and they said, okay, well, that's a ridiculous question to say the mind can change the brain. So prove it. So I said, okay, well, give me the worst population you can think of, the most difficult population, not worst. And they said, well, work with traumatic brain injured patients who have been in comas for longer than 8 hours, because that was considered irreversible brain damage. I said, and I took them on, and I started doing research. And my first major study was with a subject who had actually been in a coma for 2 weeks and had been told by her neurologist that her parents had been told that she would be a vegetable. Literally, those were the words. Thank God they don't use those words anymore to a patient's face or to a parent's face, but they did. And those parents contacted me because they heard I was doing this kind of research, and they said they cannot just give up on their child. They've pretty much been told to give up, but they didn't. They had stuck with her. She came out of her coma. They had done their best to stimulate her. They'd brought her home, and even coming out the coma and functioning at whatever level. Long story short, that was a miracle. She was 16 at the time of her accident, 17 when they contacted me. She had lost almost her whole of her 11th grade year, and her peer group was going into 12th grade. Her desire when they came to me was to get back into 12th grade and to finish 12th grade. Her her doctors and her teachers all said, why are you even trying that? She couldn't even cope on a 2nd grade level. And so, I was a new scientist, young therapist, new in the research, believed totally that you could change. And I said, okay, well, let's do it. Let's try. And within 8 months, that girl, 3 times a week, and I say this, I saw her 3 hours a week. And within 8 months, that young girl not only had gone from 2nd grade back to 12th grade, but she finished 12th grade with her peer group. And she did better in her grades than she did prior to her accident. She battled like crazy with math, was a very average student prior to the accident. Post-accident, she was a math genius. Her IQ score, not that IQ score says much, but I had it done by a neuropsychologist who does it in a specific way. And she was basically on the genius level. Prior to that, her IQ was average. average. So here we have someone who was average student, average IQ, average intelligence, kind of just, going along, has a terrible accident, is written off by the medical community. And by using her mind, she becomes a math genius, goes back to college, goes and finishes school, goes to college, goes on to make a life for herself. And that was one of hundreds and then thousands of cases. So that really got me going. And what that was is I showed neuroplasticity. I showed that when you deliberately use your mind in a specific way, you're going to change your brain. Your brain is substance. It's physical substance. And it is driven by the mind. So it's the thing or process that helps us to experience life, and the mind uses the brain to convert that experience into a way that we can actually express that experience. So in other words, we are having an experience now. We're having a discussion about this topic of mind, brain, mental health, and all the things we get into, but that is being absorbed taken in and processed through think, feel, choose, and all these photons and all the gravitational fields and things, which is mind, and pushed into the brain. And the brain responds on an electromagnetic, and I've got a brain here, electromagnetic, chemical, and neurochemical and genetic level. And everything I'm saying is growing in your brain as trees. So I'm growing brains you growing brains in your trees from me being the source. I'm supplying the information, you listening, and your listening is going into the root system. Like a tree for the listeners, I'm holding up a little plant in a little tree in a pot, and the root system is in the pot. But that root system, you plant the seed, which is the name of the podcast, seed. Then as I'm talking, those are the roots, the root memories. It's the source. So the roots are the source of the experience. And then the branches, this is so cool, are your interpretation, your thinking, feeling, and choosing, which is based on your identity of the information. And then all of this together, at the end of this conversation, you now have this knowledge in your brain as a tree, in the gravitational fields of your mind as waves, and in the DNA of your body, changing your actual DNA. Because it goes mind to brain, brain to body. So now let's say it's a toxic experience. Here's a toxic tree. So it literally, the thoughts look like trees in the brain. That's why I use these analogies. And so this is now this wiry one I brought all the way from South Africa. This is now a toxic version. So this would be, let's say, COVID. There we go. The pandemic. There's your pandemic trauma tree. And it is a trauma. It's changed our lives. You don't know what's going on. So the root system is right from when it started, and all the uncertainty and the news bullet, the news and the media and your own experience and the isolation and whatever happened to you, that's all in the root system. As the root system grows, you interpret. So each day there's something added, and you're adding to, so the branch memories are how you think, feel, and choose about those. It's easy to understand something like sexual trauma because it's so insidious, but generally there's the trauma, and the interpretation is, you always experience, interpret, and this is literally our identity. So this is toxic, so identity is toxic. So someone who's had sexual trauma, they tend to see themselves as shame. I deserve pain. I'm bad. It's my fault. Because those are the standard kind of ways that someone will think when they've gone through, that you have to change when someone has gone through major sexual abuse, because it's such a distortion. So that then is how the person then shows up. So if this is undealt with, this is real in the brain. It's protein tree-like structure in the brain. It's in the mind as these waves. It's in the DNA of our body. So when something triggers this, the whole experience comes back, and that's why we have the somatic, the body experience. The body keeps the score, that kind of concept. And so that's why for someone who experiences trauma, they will get the trigger. The trigger brings back all the data, all the emotions, the interpretation, how they see themselves, back to the root, and it's all drawn up from the body to the data in the brain with the feelings and stuff. And then so the body's the sensations, the brain is the data of what happened in the feelings, and then the mind is the whole experience. And it can be 10 years, 20 years later, but the experience comes back. And until this is deconstructed and reconstructed into something healthy, this is controlling, and it is real. So the immune system of the brain and body recognize this as real, and will send out in exactly the same way as the COVID virus is got the weird protein, and we all know that this weird protein stimulates the immune system to fight it, which we all understand. But do we realize that toxic trauma, that COVID trauma that you've experienced, is also a physical tree in your brain? like the COVID protein, different protein to the COVID, but also protein. It's real. What I'm saying is that this is real. So your immune system of your brain, as much as it will fight the COVID virus or any bacteria or anything that's invading your survival or threatening your survival, I should say, a toxic thought is also threatening your survival. So the immune system will also fight this. It responds in the same way. So we get the whole physiological response. So I mean, that's a long answer to your question, but essentially that's what I've studied for 38 years. And what I try and do is I've got the whole therapeutic application, but I work very much now in trying to bring this to everyone, because everyone has a mind. Your mind never stops, and everyone needs to know how to manage their mind. And we need to teach us.
I'm taking you to every dinner party I have, because no guest will be bored. I mean, I could listen to you talk for hours.
I know my trauma right now that I'm thinking about. I know Charissa's thinking about one that's, in our heads right now. And you talk about the therapeutic application. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but is that what you're talking about with these 5 steps in your book that you go over with cleaning up your mental mess? Can we maybe talk about what these 5 steps are all about? Because your book's coming tomorrow to my house, but I'm ready to go. Like, do you want to go over the Cliff Notes version of this?
Sure, absolutely. So 38 years ago, when I started in the field with that patient that I told you about, I thought, how am I going to be able to help this person understand what is a thought? What are memories? Are they the same thing? Well, how can you build them? Can you change them? Can you rewire them? How do you change your brain, and how do you change your feeling? So those were my questions that I was asking. How can I help her get back her social, emotional, cognitive functioning? And so in that process, I studied sort of the whole neuroscience side of all this stuff and the psychological side and the combination, and came up with a 5-step process that was born 38 years ago, developed a theory. That's what scientists do. You develop theories, you develop processes. And basically the Neuro Cycle is like Amazon. That's what the Neuro Cycle is. It's like a delivery system enabling you to manage your mind. So it's a mind management delivery system where you use your wise mind, which all of us have. Our core of who we are is wisdom. It's survival. It's love. It's all our neurobiology. Everything is designed for that. We see that in quantum physics, we see it in physics, we see it in neurobiology, psychoneurobiology, all this stuff. We see that we are, as humans, we're wired for survival. Just having an immune system is because we're survival oriented. We are optimism oriented, and we're drawn towards that to fix any imbalance that threatens that. So essentially the 5-step system is a delivery system for helping you to recognize and see, hey, there's an imbalance. There's a threat to my survival. And how can I find out what it means, and how can I fix that? And so essentially this toxic trauma is going to produce signals, and that's your non-conscious mind, because you have different levels of mind. Your non-conscious mind sending a warning signal to your conscious mind saying, hey, wake up, like an alarm wakes you up, like a fire alarm tells you something is going on. There's always a source to those, to how we are expressing ourselves in our emotions. 4 areas: our emotions, our physical sensations in our body, our behaviors, and our perspective of how we're looking at life. What does it mean to be human and to be alive? And this thoughts memory thing, because at the core, whatever you do is still a human. That's our core. What is our core humanity? And what sort of level of regulation do you have? So that was kind of the background that the system developed out of a need to understand that, and out of a need to give a patient in a severely extreme state of traumatic brain injury or Alzheimer's or autism or learning disabilities or something like that, to help them as well as me and my kids and everyone else, because we've all got a mind. Our mind, you're alive, your mind's functioning and working through your brain. So your mind never stops. I mean, you can go 3 weeks without food. You can go 3 days without water. You can go 3 minutes without oxygen, but you don't even go 3 seconds without your mind working. It's your engine. And if your mind doesn't, if you're not regulating it, your mind is going to be shuffled all over the place, because this mind that drives everything has 2 major components, 2 sides to it. One is the messy mind and one is the wise mind. This is the simplest way to understand this. And the messy mind is, both of them are completely normal. We've all got them and they're both fantastic. The messy mind is how we experience life. Like, we don't know what's coming up. We can't control events or circumstances. We can't control people. We can't control what happens to us. We can only control what happens in us. We can only control our responses. So we all understand that. So that not being able to control is all the messy mind. You're basically an experiment in action. every moment of every day, because you don't know what I'm going to say next. You don't know what's going to happen in the next moment when you finish this podcast. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. So the problem comes in that we've got so caught up in technology and neuroreductionism, which is focused on the physical and the brain, and sort of like trying to get an external goal, that we've forgotten about the process of self-regulation, which is, oops, I've made a mess. It's okay to make a mess because we have been trained to hide anything that we have deemed weak. Meanwhile, everything that is supposedly weak or toxic is actually a really beautiful, helpful messenger. It is your non-conscious mind and your brain and your body trying to actually dissipate this toxic energy so that you can survive. But instead of us welcoming those in, which Eastern philosophy actually does, and I show this with my research too, and there's a lot of research in this field showing that when you embrace these emotions and these behaviors and these perspectives that are toxic, when you embrace them as messengers as opposed to trying to hide them as bad things, as symptoms of a disease, if you rather do the other helpful messenger thing, you completely shift your neurophysiology. So as I learned all of this, I realized I have to create a system that's going to help people to get into the right mind management process, that they can learn to manage their mind for the big stuff, like the big traumas that all of us have trauma, and there's no one who's exempt from trauma. We all have depression and anxiety. Just it's different degrees at different times of our lives, and sometimes it accumulates and we crash, and other times we can keep going because there's a normal level of anxiety that we all have, and then there's extreme versions because of extreme situations. But all of those are not diseases. All of those are human responses to just being a human in life, and the shitty things that happen in life and the nice things that happen in life. It's all our responses, but everything's a message. So when you have peace and calm, beautiful message, absorb that, grow that, focus on it, grow, which is what sort of meditation and those kind of things do. But don't be scared of the bad stuff, because they're also telling you something beautiful. So what we've got to do is help people in those different states, and ourselves, because all of us have this to different degrees at different stages. We've got to level the playing fields, tell ourselves it's okay, and manage those processes. And that's what the neurocycle is. It can be used in a heavy therapeutic sense, which therapists do, but you don't have to be a therapist to use it. You just have to understand the 5 steps, and anyone at any age can understand them. That's why I bring out the books. I've got an app as well called the Neuro Cycle app that we're always growing and adding more stuff on and everything to help people. But it's basically a delivery system for how can I stand back, observe these signals, and how can I become a detective, find out why I'm doing them, and then how can I reconceptualize them. No one's going to, the abuse happened, the trauma happened, COVID happened, the loss happened, the grief, the bullying. It has happened. It's happened to you, but you can change and reconceptualize what's in you and change how it plays out into your future. Does that make sense?
No, it is. And we said it, to start, we were so excited to speak to you. Of course, Mental Health Awareness Week shouldn't just be limited to a week. It should be,
it's our lifetime.
constant,
it's like every day.
It's our lifetime. Exactly. So that's why we wanted to take this opportunity to sort of expand upon that. Knowing that we don't have as much time with you as we obviously want. When you mention the 5 steps, I mean, it says they're simple, scientifically proven steps. Are they bullet points, or are they something that you can, get the thesis statement of what are those 5 bullet points that people can put in their pocket and take with them?
Absolutely.
Daily?
So essentially you can use, if you think of it like this, it's, as I said, it's a delivery system. So it's basically just a way that you organize your mind about everything. So the easiest way to learn the system is to do it is to practice using it for something like a toxic habit or a toxic trauma. So start at this point. Okay, what is a pattern in your life? Start there. Like, think, whoever's listening, just think, what is a disruptive pattern in my life at the moment? All of us have got something. Actually, you probably find that you can list maybe 5 or 10, and that's okay. Start with the one that's like that you'd rank as the highest problematic, disruptive feature in your life at the moment, pattern, okay? That's a good place to start. Then, once you've identified that, then you stand back and you say, okay, this is a very normal human reaction. There is nothing wrong with me. I'm going through something. Even linked to, let's say it's an addiction. Maybe you're addicted to something at the moment. Maybe you like an alcoholic, or you into drugs and that kind of thing. Even that is not that you are diseased. it is that you are using that as a coping mechanism. So there's a reason why you feel the need to be drinking at this stage, or taking drugs, or over-exercising, or under-eating, or over whatever. Everything we do always has a reason. So you've got to tell yourself, that's the pattern that's worrying me, and there's a reason why I'm doing it, and it's okay. That's my messy mind trying to deal with life. But I have a wise mind. Everyone has this at their core. We call it wired for love, and literally there's no structure in the brain or the body that is wired for not managing the mess. We are wired to make a mess and manage it. We're wired to make the mistakes, repair and grow. We're not wired to not make any mistakes. That's a ridiculous goal that we've set in the self-help industry, that you can always be positive and you can always attract positive things and just say 10 positive affirmations and say 10 gratitude statements. If you start your gratitude diary, but you haven't dealt with your core issues, you are going to shift a little bit, but you're actually going to fall back because you're just trying to slap a Band-Aid on a bullet wound, as one of my friends would say. You're just trying to nip the head of the weeds. Mm-hmm. So essentially, you come into the neurocycle with the attitude of, it's okay. It's okay to do this. Humans from the beginning of time have done lousy things and have battled or have been victims of terrible things. All of us need the opportunity to be able to express our story, because everyone has multiple stories. And the longer we suppress it, the more we are going to die younger. And just before I dive into the steps, we are in an era now where we've been the most advanced technologically and medically wise, which everyone knows. But what we don't know, which is not being spoken about enough, is that despite that, the decades trend of people living longer has reversed. So even prior to COVID, people have been dying 8 to 25 years younger than they should from preventable lifestyle diseases in this modern era. Can you believe it? So from 1996 to 2014, they picked up this trend and it's continued. It's called deaths of despair. And it's from preventable lifestyle diseases. So people are dying from stress-induced diseases. We've established the link between unmanaged mind and toxic stress and physiological damage. If for every unmanaged toxic thought, the vulnerability in your body increases. And over time, that increase it gets more and more and more. Eventually, you can be 35 to 98% vulnerable in your body to disease from unmanaged minds. And that's what's happening. People are dying from cardiovascular events because they've just never had a chance to really process their issues. And then they are developing addictions and over or under exercising and eating the wrong foods. And all of that combines to a lifestyle combination that creates chaos and your heart packs up. And that's unnecessary. We know enough to not have that happening. We can live full, healthy lives. Even when we're sick, people can live pretty full, healthy lives, because that's been shown as well. So the neurocycle comes from all of that angle, and it's so important that you come from that mindset. So essentially, it's very systematic. It drives the brain. I've actually got a chart in the book, and the chart breaks down the 5 steps. It's a very simple overview. Let's see which page it's on. If anyone has got the book or is getting the book, on page 181, but I'm just going to show you. I don't know if you can see it, but there's a chart that has the 5 steps in the middle of the book. And I say, step 1 does this, and then it does this step 1 is this, and then step 1, then it does this in the brain, this in the body, this in the mind, because those are 3 different things. And so the first thing is that whole mindset stuff I've just given you, that come in with that attitude, this is helpful. It's so critical. I cannot stress that enough, because if you don't, you're going to come into the neurocycle concept, beating yourself, being unkind to yourself, and already 1,400 neurophysiological responses are working against you. So your resilience is already dropped. So for example, if you think, oh, well, I'm bad and this is terrible and I'm sick and I'm brain dead, I'm crazy, I'm this and I'm useless and I'm shame and, I've got to do this and there's another thing I've got to do. And if you come in with that, one of the 1,400 responses that will happen is that the blood vessels around your heart will constrict. And instead of constricting and relaxing, they'll stay in a constricted state chronically, so for a long period. That'll decrease blood flow and oxygen to your brain, which will decrease your ability to think clearly and increase your chance of a stroke. So that's not a good thing. And then you get another signal to your kidneys to increase the salt water in your blood to constrict the blood vessels again, which is supposed to only be a temporary thing, to have a burst in blood pressure, and then it's supposed to relax, but then it doesn't stop. So you get hypertension, your blood pressure increases, and that also increases your risk of stroke. And cumulatively over time, these things just break down our body. But if we come in and say, life is so hard, this has happened, that's happened, and we're all honest about it, 3% of leaders are only talking about this. If 100% of us were saying, I had such a lousy day, this is difficult, I'm going through this in my life, and we all accept it with each other, it becomes the norm to be able to express and support and get it out, we would find a much healthier society. We wouldn't have such broken identities and so on, because you're all trying to hide behind this veneer and pretend everything's cool and wonderful when it's not. And it's okay that it's not. So that's also so important that you come into it with that. And then just to get down to the practical brass tacks roots, this cycle works over 63 days. One of the things that I did research is how long does it take to actually break down a memory and to change it to that it's the new memory, thoughts are made of memories. That's a thought, and then all the little branches are the memories. So memories are different to thoughts. Thoughts, the concept, the tree, and then the detail is in the memory. So the feeling, memories, data, memories, what happened, that's all roots, branches, etc. Okay, so it takes 21 days to actually build a memory of a concept. Okay, so 21 days to build something. So it takes 21 days also to break it down then. But it doesn't, that's not a habit. We've been told that habits form in 21 days. That's a myth. It was just a myth that's been promulgated. It's not science at all. It takes an average 60 to 66 days. Right? I found in my research 63 days, but give or take a couple of days on either side. And it's 3 cycles of 21. And the first cycle is where you identify from the signals to the root of what's happening, and you deconstruct and you reconstruct. And that process takes about 21 days. And sometimes you only do part of it, and then you have to do another cycle. Then once you've got to this point, you then spend another 42 days turning this into a habit. Because this is hard work, and you don't solve build Rome in a day. You can't fix it in one cycle. Each day it's designed that your brain does a little bit each day. That's how you are sustainable. It can take a bit of discipline to get yourself back into it. Like if you've got no exercise routine, and it's the same principle operating. But once you've done one cycle, it changes your life completely, because you suddenly see, hey, I feel depressed, but I don't have to stay there. It doesn't have to affect my whole day, my whole life, my every relationship. I can actually manage this. I can get through this. It's such a relief, because it's okay to feel like this. I'm not a bad person. I'm not a broken person. I'm not a brain disease person. I'm not crazy. I'm just a normal human who's going through life. This is just a signal. This is just a response. There is a reason. So the first step then is to gather awareness. The second step is reflect. The third and fourth are right steps. And the fifth step is an action step that disciplines you to not ruminate. That's basically the essence of it. In the first step, which is called gather awareness, gather is every word, every description has been very scientifically tested. Gather is an agency-giving word. It's an empowering word. It means that I don't have all the apple trees falling on my head of life, all sitting under the apple tree and everything's falling on my head and I'm overwhelmed. I'm not doing that. I'm actually standing back and I'm selecting, I'll pick that apple today. I can only deal with that apple. I'll gather that one. I'll put that in my basket. I'll become aware of that and I'll deal with that today. So it's a gathering of awareness that you control the process. Now, there's 4 basic areas that you gather awareness of. But before you do that, you need to prepare your brain. So as you sit down and start the Neuro Cycle, if you do the app, you'll see there's a 2 to 3 minute little preparation exercise. And that's the breathing stuff and meditation or tapping or havening or like all these little different exercises that change your neurophysiology and bring your neurochemistry into balance and balance the 2 sides of your brain. And they don't fix anything. They just increase awareness and they prepare your brain and body for the work. So I call all of that brain preparation. And then, so you can do it in your life, but then do a little brain preparation before. And then you dive into the 5 steps, of which gather awareness is the first.
I mean, I wish I had all the time with you. I think that's exactly why it's important for everyone to go out and grab this book, because there's so many layers to reversing the Neuro Cycle and reversing, even why we wanted to have you on today. And again, thank you for being here, was to reverse the stereotypes and the stigmas that are attached to mental health, and that there are so many layers. And as you've demonstrated in your plant analogy, the root system. So it is so important for everyone to educate themselves on that, because we don't want those kinds of plants in our mind. Cleaning up your mental mess. The 5 simple, scientifically proven steps to reduce anxiety, stress, and toxic thinking. Caroline Leaf, thank you so much. You also have your podcast, which will dive into this even further. I'm first of all, I didn't even know there was a difference between brain and mind until
most people
speaking
don't.
to you. So Yeah, so I have a lot of things to explore, and you've done an incredible job of educating our listeners and viewers in a short amount of time. I know that I now want to scratch the surface further. So thank you so much.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on your show and letting me talk so much.
For sure.
No, it's such a big subject.
Oh my God, please.
Oh, for sure.
It is. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on your show.
Thanks.
Bye. Thank you.
I will not calm down about the education Dr. Caroline Leaf just schooled us in. Whenever I hear someone like that, and I know you probably feel the same way, I'm humbled by I don't know anything. I mean, I didn't even know the difference between a mind and a brain, but I am so curious because, I mean, Erin, our background in sports, you hear it all the time that sports are 90% mental and 10% physical.
Yeah.
And, players' ability to compartmentalize things that are going on and then have their actions follow. I definitely, I couldn't understand everything she was saying because she's so smart, but I'm curious to dive more into her book. And I know that it's important for me to get out of my head with certain things and understand why we think the way that we do. How did you feel about it all?
Well, two things. The brain is very interesting to me because, I married somebody who had a lot of head injuries. We're around guys that have done that. So I'm always curious about brain and mental exercises and things like that. And I thought that was so refreshing. Story she first told about somebody that suffered an accident and getting them back on track physically as well as mentally. I love the fact that you can go in and kind of reteach yourself. So I thought that was huge. I also wanted to ask, but I know we were short on time, I didn't need to ask because I get it. How much you need to take care of your mentals, Marshawn Lynch, because your physicals, will then follow. You know what I mean? I am so convinced, and this is so crazy. And wow, we're getting deep today on this one. After my whole thing with the, stalking incident, and then I was on trial, my dad, well, first of all, after I was, we found out I had a stalker and that whole thing came out. My dad, 3 months later, was diagnosed with prostate cancer. And I am convinced in my head that was because of the stress that my family was going through. After my trial, which was the most anxiety, maybe besides this week, I've ever suffered in my life, I was diagnosed with cervical cancer. And I do believe that. If you, and I do, and I love you, and you've said this to me, and my girlfriends have been saying it to me all week, you keep your shit in, it's going to come out another way, and it's not going to be a healthy way. And I think I didn't need her to say that, but she was getting around to it. And I've got this book coming tomorrow, and I can't wait to crack it open because I have such a journey to be on right now for myself and for my family that I need to get my head clear and right. And I was curious when you were sitting there listening to her, I hold my tension in my chest and in my throat. Were you feeling any bit of anxiousness because you were thinking of your own traumas?
Yeah, I don't feel it physically the way that you do. Yeah. I think I feel things so emotionally, hence why when you're hurting, I cry, or when whether we have a fight or whether Kyle or whatever have a fight, I cry, that's my release. But I think that going back to what you're saying,
because I don't.
Right. That's my release of things. Or, you and I always talk about it. If we're in a bad mood, go for a run, get on the bike. We need to release that.
By the way, I've been hitting personal records on this Peloton this week like nobody's business. I've been fucking crushing this shit this week. Go on.
Silver lining, sister. That's what we're talking about. But yeah, it's definitely a release. Think about it. I'm no doctor, but serotonin levels and endorphins and all of those things. That's crazy though. I had never, until you just mentioned it, that correlation between your health and your father's health and all of the stress. And then I think to myself, holy shit, haven't you been through enough? And it's that thing of, my dad always talks about, it's not what happens to you, it's how 100%. You react to what happens to you. And when she mentioned that in even the short amount of time we got with her, I thought about that. I was it's so mental how your next steps of what you're going to do, independent of something you couldn't control, could define what happens after that. Or, same thing for me. I had that weird guy, that stalker guy. And then I had the hacking of my phone and all of that stuff that came out. And I remember, my dad being like, all right, you get a couple days to be sad. And now we're next play mentality in this household.
Love it.
Guess what? There's 4 quarters. There's been a few turnovers. Some of them not your fault. But guess what? This game ain't over, and you get a choice on if you want to win or if you want to lose, and it's all predicated on your actions in response to it. So I believe in exhausting all options, and it starts with that mental mindset of this thing ain't over. So we can sit and cry about things, or we can put actions to it. And so I just sort of was raised in that more of that mentality of okay, well that sucks, but let's go.
Sounds like a pep talk I got the other morning as I was walking my dog. And you know what's great about that? I was crying so hard with you, and I just had all this crap coming down my nose. I had Howie's leash in one hand, I had the phone in the other, and a poop bag in the other. So I couldn't wipe the shit coming out of my nose. Like, I literally walked in the house, and like Jarrett was making coffee and getting Howie, and he's like, "You okay?" And I was like, I just got off the phone with Carissa. And he was like, "You need a tissue?" I was like, "But I got a poop bag full."
I love you. And you know what? Life is full of a bunch of shit, literally. But if we can, another thing too that I love about you is there's humor involved in all of this. And we have to laugh because that releases, again, not a doctor, some positivity. And not to, again, this has been a very heavy podcast. But remember when Alyssa got her brain tumor, my niece diagnosed with a brain tumor at 6 years old, and you were there for me every step of the way, and I was a mess. You know who wasn't a mess? Alyssa. You know what she did? People would bring like stuffed animals and balloons and flowers into her room. At 6 years old, she goes, "Guys, I don't really need any more presents. Can you just make a financial donation to help the other kids at Children's Hospital?" She then went on television and donated a check for other children with pediatric cancer. I said, and now Alyssa's in college and like all of these things. And I just think about her, and how 6 years old with a brain tumor and other kids are like outside playing and she's raising money. I'm like, Jesus.
Alyssa,
I need to,
your niece, your gorgeous niece.
Yeah. And then all she wanted to do was go to Dancing with the Stars, and Erin took her, and like it was like the night of her life. But anyways, I just love you, and you make an impact on people, and we're here for you. And I hope anyone listening that's going through anything that they're going through knows that surround yourself with good people, and just know that the game ain't over, even if you think it is. So
and watch the Friends reunion if you feel like crap, because it'll make you feel so good.
Dr. Caroline Leaf, her book is available. I know, Erin, you just bought it. She also has a podcast, and I'm going to dive more into how I can be a better wife and friend and all the other things. So love you, love you, love you, love you.
Love
Erin.
you.
And for everybody listening and watching, thank you for letting us open up.
Ross and Rachel, please date.
Come on. We will not calm down on that. No. What was the singer of that? I'll Be There For You?
Was it the Rembrandts?
Boom. Did you pull that? Fucking A. That was sexy.
Calm Down with Erin and Charissa is a production of iHeartRadio.
For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.